I was not going to write a script for this video, but given the temerity of all of these people talking shit on a movie that was very good, and because I also defended Steven Universe in a similar fashion, I figured I'd throw my hat into the ring on this one. I'm not good at debates, but I'm great at making videos because I actually check stuff before I say it. And man, did I check some things. So grab a Snickers bar and a soda, or if you're like me, Japanese yam and some water. I ate the yam already, so all I got is the water. Sit back and relax as I say my piece on Christopher Nolan's adaptation of The Odyssey. Anyone who calls me a close friend will know what my favorite movie of all time is. I've even shared it on my socials a few times. That movie is none other than Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, starring Kevin Costner and Morgan Freeman. As a kid, I was always into stories with sword fighting and stuff like that, where the hero gets the girl at the end of the movie. But I watched that movie a lot, okay? And as I watched it more and more, seriously, I even got into trouble for rewinding it so much at a particular part that I liked that the video popped inside of the VCR. I got into trouble for that. I found myself loving so many aspects of that movie. Like how some of the cast, including Costner himself as Robin Hood, used their American accents during the entire film. And how the late Alan Rickman even rewrote his own lines for that movie. And it was so great and made him unforgettable. And it paid off in the end because everyone who watches that movie remembers Alan Rickman for it. As I've gotten older and I've realized more things about the film over the years, in my rewatches of it, which there are many rewatches of it, one thing stands out to me. While the film takes inspiration from the legend of Robin Hood, it does not adhere strictly to the historical accuracy, thus taking creative liberties for storytelling purposes. It's at this point that I must regretfully stop talking about my favorite movie and talk about the one that's the subject here. But I feel as if what I said here makes for a good opener, as we'll revisit some of it later. I was going to wait to watch The Odyssey. Whenever I go to the movies, I tend to get a little bit agoraphobic when the theater is full. That's why I love to go when a movie is just on its way out. But I digress. I went to watch it specifically because I saw a bunch of people who said that it was boring, with even one of my friends claiming that it was putting him to sleep. And there was the backlash of some new term that I had just learned between today and yesterday when I watched the film called race baiting. I had to see this for myself because the trailer for that movie hooked me, and I couldn't believe that anything as epic as Homer's Odyssey could be boring in any way. Now, I have to provide a little bit of context here. I've read Homer's Odyssey. In fact, it was one of the books that I kept at my parents' house before the fire because my apartment was too small to hold all of the books that I owned. But I read that poem. It's considered a poem for the uninitiated. I read it back to back. So seeing it again in film format, because it actually was a film already in 1997, but we'll get to that in a bit. That was a treat for me. And directed by Christopher Nolan, the same guy that made the Dark Knight series of films. Come on, man. There's no way. With all of these things in mind, I went to go and watch the movie. And honestly, it was one of the best things that I've watched in a long time. And probably will be for quite some time again. I have to take a second here to make this the part of the video where I say there will possibly be spoilers for the movie. I say possibly on the if chance that some of you read Homer's Odyssey or even watched the 1997 version of the film, which I will briefly go over in a bit. I will try not to talk about the details in Nolan's adaptation for those who want to see it, but if I find that I can't help it, I will put a big red spoiler warning on the screen. My goal with this video is to help people understand the way I look at film and literature now and possibly try to see things from a different lens instead of go along with feelings that may be thrust upon them from other outside influences. So consider this my long-winded way of saying spoiler warning. Leave if you must, watch the movie first, and then come back. You have been warned. Firstly, an extreme Cliff Notes version of the story of the Odyssey from the poem. The movie follows this almost to the letter, and for the purposes of not spoiling too much, I'm gonna leave out a ton of detail. So this is friendly territory for you. The Odyssey tells a story of King Odysseus and his journey back home to Ithaca that took 10 years, on top of having spent another previous 10 years in the Trojan War. He and his men encountered hardship after hardship on their way back to Ithaca. However, they, or rather Odysseus, seemed to be cursed by the god Poseidon after an encounter with a cyclops on an island that happened to be the son of the sea god. Meanwhile, back home in Ithaca, Penelope, the wife of Odysseus, and her son Telemachus are going through their own problems. The palace is now overrun with suitors who have outright besmirched the home of Odysseus and are now vying for the queen's hand in marriage. Very disrespectfully, might I add, to the point where Telemachus wants to kill them all just so they would leave his home in peace. He visits Menelaus, the brother of King Agamemnon, who was responsible for having Odysseus leave for the Trojan War in the first place, with the intention of hearing any news about his father. After a lot more trials and tribulations, one of which is being imprisoned by the sea nymph Calypso, Odysseus finally makes it to Ithaca and reveals himself to his son before being disguised as a beggar by the goddess Athena, so as to see what happened to his palace since he's been gone all those years, instructing Telemachus to not tell his mother about his return as yet. Penelope, having given up hope after 20 years of waiting for her husband's return, decides to offer a challenge to the suitors finally. Whomever can string the bow of Odysseus and then shoot an arrow cleanly through the series of axe heads will win her hand in marriage. They all fail. They never even strung the bow. Odysseus, disguised as the beggar, takes up the bow when all the suitors have already failed, strings it, notches an arrow, and fires cleanly. With that, the disguise is removed and everyone now sees Odysseus before them, who then proceeds to kill every one of the suitors with the assistance of Telemachus. He then reunites with his beloved Penelope, and that is the end of the story. Now, Christopher Nolan's version sticks a lot to the original text with a few changes that give the story a different lens. And I should have the spoiler warning thing on the screen right now, so be ready for this, because there are mild spoilers coming up. The reason that Odysseus is made to not go home in this version is because when he and his men sacked Troy, they did so using deception. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up the story of the Trojan horse. However, it is also explained in the film and in the text. But in a nutshell, they used the symbol of peace to deceive a city, pillage it, and defile their temples, which was like stomping on every core belief system of all Greeks. To put it in another way, it's as if they defiled the church. It's even mentioned in the film that the age of the gods is ending because people are going against the traditions that make them who they are and that they've abided by for centuries past till now. This film and all of the symbolism involved was structured in a way to mark the end of an era for the people of Greece. To further cement this, Nolan's version of Odysseus didn't even believe in the gods and says this outright before they set sail for Ithaca, always referring to them as your gods when talking to his men that do believe in them. What I gleaned from this film is that this journey that Odysseus was embarking on was one of punishment from the gods, of course, but also of self-discovery and revelation. It was a journey that he had to endure to really feel the weight of what he and his men had done, which brought about the beginning of the end of the era of the gods and those that believe in them and their customs that were obeyed from city to city. It was also a journey to make him realize that he is in a world that is beyond man and furthermore beyond himself. Okay, let's tackle the big elephant in the room. Or in this case, the big horse. See what I did there? Nah? No? You guys suck. Firstly, the outrage over Lupita Nyong'o being cast as Helen of Troy. In Nolan's film, she also played the part of Clytemnestra, who was made to be a twin sister of Helen in the movie, which, while not in the original text, was a decent touch for me. There has been a large outcry of people claiming that the only reason that she is there is because of DEI, or they use the term race baiting, which I then had to look up. From what I have gathered, race baiting, as according to Webster's dictionary, is defined as the unfair use of statements about race to try to influence the actions or attitudes of a particular group of people. I've come to the realization that the term in this sense is misused. The argument being made by some that Lupita being cast is because of some unsubstantiated claim that Nolan did this to secure himself an Oscar for the movie. This is quite a stretch. We're talking about a character of fiction from a mythological story. The only thing this sounds like to me are the fanboys who got mad when a black person was casted as the new Doctor Who. And I am willing to bet my life savings of $3 that either none or a very small fraction of these guys even read Homer's Odyssey. Lupita did a great job in both roles she played, especially for the way the story was told from Nolan's perspective. It baffles me how there is this much backlash from people over a character that wasn't on the screen for more than 5 or 6 minutes. To even add to this absurdity that they use about historical reference, I went and watched the version of the Odyssey that aired on ZNS years ago. To the non-Bahamians watching, ZNS was the only TV station that we had here in the Bahamas years ago before cable TV came along and rescued us from reruns of Sesame Street. It was a 2-part miniseries that told its own rendition of the Odyssey, and guess who played Calypso? Vanessa Williams, a black woman. Need I say more? Probably not. But anywho, let's move on. Elliot Page is also in this movie. I remember that there were rumors going around that Elliot was going to play as Achilles. Everybody was in an uproar over it. And then the movie came out and he wasn't even playing that role. Turns out that he played a character named Sinon. Let's be clear. Sinon was not mentioned in Homer's Odyssey, but was mentioned in Virgil's Aeneid, which takes place before Homer's Odyssey. It's another epic that tells the story of the Trojan War and how it was his job to goad the Trojans into bringing the Trojan horse into the city, claiming it to be a gift from the gods to protect them from the Greek army. However, in Nolan's variation of the story, Sinon tells the Trojans that the horse is a symbol of peace and surrender. But even after all that, and after finding out that Elliot wasn't playing Achilles at all, people were still trying to find reasons to hate on this movie for him being cast in it. I can say again, as I said for Lupita, that the role was perfect for him and that it was well executed. I feel that Christopher Nolan picked these people for their respective roles because it was his vision for them to be played by them. I mean, that's kind of a director's thing, especially when, and I can't believe I have to say this again, you are working with a fictional story. One of the complaints I heard that baffled me the most is how the actors blatantly use their American accents throughout the whole movie. You had Telemachus saying mom and dad instead of mother and father, and no one speaks in the typical European accents that are typically used for these kinds of movies. Personally, I consider this a win, because Greeks never sounded like a couple of gentlemen on their way from Parliament after having a snifter at the local pub. While I will admit that this was a bold move on Nolan's part, it wasn't something that stood out to me enough for me to complain about it. I feel as if it did not take away from the telling of the story at all. I really think that it was deliberately written this way for modern audiences. It's kind of cool if you ask me, a way to modernize the story so that audiences of today will understand what is said, given that we are in an era where people don't really know what certain old words mean anymore. So, yeah. And finally, the last complaint that I will tackle is the complaint that the movie was boring. This one struck a nerve with me. There is an article from Time magazine, among others, that rips this movie to absolute shreds, in my opinion. The 2 lines from the article that stood out the most to me, however, was what the author said firstly about the action scenes, stating that, quote, the battle scenes, while elaborate, were so tastefully unbloody that it's hard to feel there's anything at stake, end quote. And then about the scenes with Calypso and Odysseus on the beach, which I have to elaborate on as the scenes that set up the story and keep it moving forward, by saying, quote, the movie kicks into snooze territory during these dreamy beach sequences. There are far too many of them scattered throughout, end quote. This all feels unjustified. Firstly, it's as if a movie has to have blood, gore, and maybe show a little boob or two in order to keep a person's interest in a film nowadays. Remember the movie I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves? For a movie that was released in 1991, had no nudity, the main actor, among others, kept their American accents, and there were no gory battle scenes. It was an all-around good movie that did so well it grossed $390.5 million worldwide, making it the second highest grossing film of 1991 that I still watch to this day and will keep watching for days to come. Amidst all of that, it tells a decent story. The pacing is sometimes a little slow, but it's all to set the story up and keep it on track. Robin Hood steals from the rich, gives to the poor, gets the girl back from Alan Rickman because he ain't the sheriff of Nottingham, okay? He's Alan Rickman, okay? Okay. They get married and everyone lives happily ever after. But you would have none of that without all of the things happening in between. Like Azim being gobsmacked by Robin's people and their stupidity.
Look. Look. How did your uneducated kind ever take Jerusalem?
God knows.
Which he then comes to learn is just ignorance because they really don't know any better and end up teaching them things. The sheer anger from Alan Rickman when he hears of Robin's antics that take money from his greedy pockets and his outburst that ensues.
That's it then. Cancel the kitchen scraps for lepers and orphans. No more merciful beheadings. And call off Christmas.
And one of my favorite scenes where Azim helps Little John's wife to give birth to their son by C-section so that she wouldn't die.
Fanny, your baby has not turned. It cannot be born without help.
All of these scenes to a lot of people nowadays are boring because there's no fast pace to them and it's not like a quick action type of movie. And to be honest, that saddens me a little. It makes me feel as if it's true that a lot of people don't read books anymore or appreciate a good build-up. Setting the story up in such a way to make you understand all the intricacies of the world that you are viewing in your imagination or in the case of movies on a screen. I guess if a story isn't about sex, action, or gory scenes, then I guess it isn't a movie in the eyes of moviegoers of today. And that sucks. I feel as if people who are making these complaints need to remember that movie making is quite literally a director's vision of how he or she thinks the story they want to tell should be told. However they want to make their movie is however they wanted it to be made. Although I feel if this rendition of The Odyssey was filmed on set in Greece with an all-Greek cast that was spoke in the Greek language straight through the movie, there was more blood in the action scenes and a few people lost an arm or some people got decapitated. There was some sultry sex scene in it, and the person that played Helen of Troy was a white, attractive Greek woman, and the movie was shortened to like an hour and 45 minutes. If all of that were the case, people would still find something to complain about. So to the people complaining, I simply say this. I don't think this movie was for you at all. I believe this movie was for people like myself who can appreciate a decent retelling of an old story that they read back when they were children, when reading books was my primary means of entertainment before I got into movies. There are other movies that come to mind for me that fit this category as well. One being The Count of Monte Cristo back in 2002. Another movie that I went to watch by myself, and I owned and read the book for a long time prior to watching the movie. It was a brilliant retelling of a classic story, and if anyone likes this kind of stuff, I recommend you go and watch that one. Jim Caviezel did a great job as Edmund Wait a minute. Jim Caviezel. Wow. I think I have something. This is crazy. But I think I have the perfect movie for all of the people that complained about The Odyssey. Walk with me on this. It's a story from a book that almost everyone has read. A great cast that not only look the part, but speak the language throughout the entire movie. Shot on location of where it was said to happen in the story, Violent scene. I mean, we're talking like uber gory, all right? With one caveat being that there's no sex scene in it, but there was none in the story either. Faithfully tied to the main text and historical references. And is done in 2 hours. I think you guys know where I'm going with this. I'm talking about none other than everyone's favorite film of 2004, The Passion of the Christ. In all seriousness, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that what I am saying makes sense to you. If you are someone who has not watched The Odyssey as yet and are looking to do so, first ask yourself if you are the type of person who can appreciate a good retelling of a classic story for modern audiences. If you can honestly say yes to that question, then by all means, go forth and watch it. However, if your answer is no, then I would implore you to not waste your money, or at least wait until it comes out on any streaming platform of your choice. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I can appreciate the changes made for the sake of palatability for a new audience. And the Black Helen of Troy doesn't bother me in the slightest. Frick, she could have been Chinese or Hispanic or whatever race. It wouldn't have bothered me either way. And a trans person playing a role in a film also doesn't put a stick in my craw. As long as the person acting in the role can do a good job that's believable to me, then I say have at it. But most importantly, the one thing I would say is this. If you did watch the movie and you didn't enjoy it, I would challenge you to ask yourself why. Like, really get to the root of what bothers you so much about it, that there's this insane amount of vitriol over a work of fiction. Maybe then you can begin to broaden your horizons a little bit. A quote from the 1997 version of The Odyssey comes to mind when Odysseus tells his son, who is angry at the suitors and wants to kill them.
To be angry is easy. But to be angry at the right man, at the right time, and for the right reason. This is difficult.
If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you very much for watching. Writing the script took most of this week, and editing it took an even longer time. If you have anything to say, please leave it in the comments. Let me hear your takes on this subject. Whether you agree or disagree is fine by me, as long as you're respectful. If you like this kind of content, consider subscribing. I don't really make these kind of long videos like that. Because, you know, I'm lazy, and short form content nowadays has all but fried the attention span of most people. But every now and again, I do a little something like this. So, you know, if you like that kind of stuff, subscribe, and, you know, you'll get some of that sometime. Or let me know, and maybe I'll be obliged to start doing more videos like this. But thank you guys once again. I love each and every one of you guys. Peace, love, and hair grease to you. And I will see you later. You guys, please be safe. I'm out. Y'all take it easy.